So Natalie Nathan has spent the past 5 years serving seniors in Southwest Idaho. She's currently the Special Projects Manager at the Area 3 Senior Services Agency. Prior to the switch to the Living Well programs, Natalie worked as a long-term care ombudsman, advocating for residents' rights and finding new ways to improve the lives of the residents in assisted living or skilled nursing facilities. Natalie graduated in December of 2013 with a master's degree in health promotion and programming with an emphasis in gerontology, and has had a passion for educating seniors on ways to live well so that they can have a long-term quality of life. In her spare time, you can find her out on the water, up in the hills, whipping up something tasty in the kitchen, or behind a microphone singing her heart out. So Natalie, we're so grateful you're back with us again this week. So I will hand it over to you. And
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. Perfect. Yeah, thank you for having me. Gosh, I'd like to say my activities have been including, you know, being out on the water or out on the trails, but they have not. This webinar obviously is rather timely given the current suggestions, recommendations to be socially and physically isolated. We're all experiencing a short glimpse of the life that a homebound senior might have, or one that has limited physical abilities and limited social interactions. But before we get started, I wanted to let me move my little screen. I just wanted to kind of maybe give some cheer, some cute dog faces. So again, like Anna mentioned, I do love being out in the hills with my doodles. There's Gibson and Lucy there. I do sing in a worship band locally, so I enjoy music and being out. And then I really enjoy being outside. So the given recommendations to be socially distant has been difficult for me as well. So today we're going to be talking about kind of what that looks like. Let me move this on my screen. So our the dangers of social isolation and loneliness for seniors really is a big issue that we need to take more and pay more attention to. Seniors who suffer from loneliness have a 64% higher risk of dementia. The infographic that's posted on your screen now is a little outdated because it's data from 2009, but I think it still gives a good glimpse. Loneliness can be as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That fact alone, and kind of doing some of my research and working with seniors in multiple capacities, was really eye-opening. We are all very aware of what it's like and those cancer risks associated with smoking and the increase of lung issues and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. But those same things can happen to a senior that's lonely. Lonely seniors have a 59% higher risk of physical and mental decline, and the rate of depression, which is kind of the behavioral health side of it. The rate of depression for seniors who live in residential care facilities can be as high as 44%. So today we're going to talk about senior loneliness and isolation. Kind of what is it? Some of the signs that may indicate a need for help, some other healthcare issues that are caused by this isolation, and then ways to combat the loneliness and isolation, which, given kind of the current situation today with COVID and being very isolated, and it's limiting in the groups that we're allowed to gather in and seniors are allowed to gather in, some of those ideas are a little more of a challenge at this time, but we're all in this together and working through some of these issues. And then lastly, I'll follow it up with some of the programs that the office that I work for, the Southwest Idaho Area Agency on Aging, ways that we're helping seniors kind of outside of this time of social isolation ways that we're helping seniors to connect and to have those meaningful relationships so that they do feel less lonely and they are taken care of and, you know, in their minds and their bodies. I think, you know, this time of being in social isolation and limiting contact is really a glimpse, you know, into this need and why we as humans really need interactions and social interactions. You know, as humans, we have that fundamental need to socialize. We're meant for community. And without it, seniors and ourselves, we can suffer high levels of stress and increased depression. And that all just leads to even more health problems. So in 2013, the World Health Organization found that approximately 15% of adults over the age of 60 suffer from some type of mental disorder. And those disorders increase with being lonely and isolated. And then they're exacerbated because they're alone. These things aren't getting reported. So physicians, geriatricians, they're really needing to start asking some different questions in those wellness visits that they're making, and us too, and caring for seniors and for caregivers alike. We have to be a little more aware of asking, so how are you feeling? Are you lonely? Are you isolated? Are you getting out? How many connections are you having a day? So this rankings from the U.S. Census Bureau. So these are, you know, we're just coming up on doing our new census data right now. So, you know, fill out your forms so you can get counted, right? These kind of graphs show where Idaho is on the risk of social isolation. So really our risk and the prevalence of social isolation in seniors over the age of 60, we're a little, or 65, excuse me. In some areas, we're above the national average, and in some areas, we're below. When we think of Idaho, a lot of people, they're migrating here to retire because it's a great place to live for the people, for the communities that we've formed, for the, you know, all of the outdoor recreation that we have available, and for the, you know, lower cost of living compared to other states. When the Census Bureau is measuring those risks of social isolation, they're looking at, is the person disabled? Are they divorced, separated, or widowed? Are they homebound? Are they living alone? Have they been married? And then what's their poverty range? And so, you know, when we look at overall, Idaho, we're at a fairly lower risk. However, with our increasing population that's aging, we should really be taking account these risk factors and what can we do about them. Some of the reasons that seniors tend to be socially isolated, it's not their fault. Winter tends to be very isolating because a lot of seniors stay in because it's nasty outside. There's ice and snow on the ground. They're afraid of falling, so they tend to be inside more. If you're widowed and you know, now you're potentially homebound because your spouse was the one who drove and you don't drive, so now you're stuck inside because of transportation. In essence, social isolation, especially in seniors, is that absence of a meaningful social relationship. Again, those events like retirement, loss of a loved one, age-related physical and mental decline make it difficult for seniors in particular to maintain social connectedness. And among those seniors 57 to 85, the social isolation may tend to increase with age. So what I've seen in my experience working with seniors is once they've retired, they don't feel useful anymore, and so they tend to isolate. You know, when a senior has moved into an assisted living or a skilled nursing facility, they have no purpose, and so they don't feel the need to interact with anybody, which is, you know, why I think the role in skilled nursing and assisted living facilities of those activity directors of pulling people out to events is really important. So, you know, we look at some of these risk factors, and then we can look at some of the signs and symptoms as well. So I put in a link to this video that kind of might give a little bit better idea of what a senior is feeling like as they are feeling, you know, lonely. The title is Tackling America's Loneliness Epidemic, and you know, while we're in the COVID-19 pandemic, it might help to give a little insight. Yeah, right now we're all maybe feeling a little isolated, and this physical distancing is something brand new for everybody. But for our homebound seniors or those that are really struggling being alone, this might help. We're not going to watch it during the webinar, just given the time constraints, but I do recommend it. It will be once the slides and everything are emailed out. The link is in there. So something to look at is, one, what is loneliness? Loneliness is that feeling of lacking meaningful social relationships. So the senior might say, gosh, I wish I had more friends, or I don't see enough of my friends or relatives. There's nobody that particular person has as a confidant. There's no real friends living nearby. As we in America have grown, we have spaced out. It used to be you lived down the street from your mom, from your grandma, from your sisters and brothers. You all lived very close, in close proximity. And now we don't do that as much anymore. You know, I think of my own family. My grandmother lives in Houston, in Texas. And, you know, my aunt also lives in Houston, but it's a 45-minute drive. And so, you know, the seeing each other doesn't happen as often. So a lot of times my grandma does feel rather lonely because there's nobody close to come in and check on her. When we feel lonely, the key is to stay in communication. So, you know, maybe this time of being physically isolated has been a good reminder that we still have phones and laptops, and you know, thank goodness for technology like Zoom and the WebEx capabilities, so that we can still be connected. In fact, when I was doing some research, some healthcare plans, they're looking at treating loneliness as more of a chronic illness and condition, and looking at providing some treatment plans. So right now, what that looks like, I don't know. It could be just kind of, they were looking at counseling and having that as a treatment option. So the counseling might be moving to more of a web-based, like FaceTime issue. We can then run into the concern of, are our seniors connected, you know, socially with internet, with that capability? And if they are, do they know how to use it? A lot of seniors do, but some don't. And especially in Idaho, in our rural areas, they might not have internet at all, and just have a landline. So having those phone communication, like landlines open, that can help combat some of that loneliness. And then when we look at social isolation, that's the absence of meaningful social relationships. So a lot of times our seniors, they're living alone. They're not getting out of the house. All of their close relatives are no longer living, or they're not nearby. They're not receiving any visits. There's very little contact with neighbors. They're alone for a good chunk of the day. And these are the people that might not have a landline or a telephone at all. And in some of the rural communities, their neighbors aren't close at all. So if they needed some help, they're not able to communicate that effectively. Seniors who do face isolation, they're more likely to suffer from elder abuse. And I just kind of want to point out that senior isolation doesn't only affect those that live alone. It's couples as well. They can be together in the home, but very isolated, especially if one of those partners has cognitive decline. They're staying in because it's a more difficult situation to have somebody with dementia out in the community. They're both elderly, taking care of each other. It can impose a lot of different challenges. Isolation is more of an objective measure of the number of contacts people have. In this case, it's about the quantity, not the quality of relationships. So when people feel socially isolated, it's possible to overcome that isolation by increasing some of those contacts. It's not easy, and there's not a super concrete way to combat that. And especially right now, a lot of the programs that my office and throughout the state of Idaho offer for seniors involves going to the senior centers and congregate meals. And those services, while they're still happening, they're not happening at the senior centers. It's a curbside meal pickup, and those relationships that they have at the senior center, those aren't happening at the moment, which is very difficult, and has been kind of a source of my last week of work of figuring out ways to connect our seniors and what we're doing. So there are some warning signs of senior isolation, and those include they're not eating well. Part of the program for congregate meals and Meals on Wheels is really to make sure that seniors that are unable to cook for themselves, do not have any social supports in the home, have a meal that's been approved by a dietitian that is a healthy, nutritious meal for a senior. A lot of seniors are having sleeping problems, and that's above and beyond the normal. They get up a couple of times in the night to use the restroom. They're just not sleeping well, or they are up all night and sleep all day, which increases their isolation because they're asleep during the daytime and they're not able to be interacting with other people. And then a lot of times that isolation is that reluctance to participate. They just don't want to go anywhere. A lot of seniors, we can offer going to the senior center for a congregate meal for the lunch, but they don't want to go. They will come up with some excuses as to why they can't go. Well, I can't drive there. Okay, well, we have some transportation to get you to the senior center. Well, I still don't want to go. I don't feel comfortable being there. And, those kind of continued and ongoing issues really can be a sign that they're just really trying to isolate and trying to not be involved socially, which is just an increased warning sign and risk that they are really feeling alone and lonely. We might also have a visitor. My coworker who meows is trying to make an appearance. So some of the health risks that are associated with loneliness and isolation, again, is that increased risk of depression. One of the researchers at UCLA, Dr. Cole, he says that loneliness acts as a fertilizer for other diseases. The biology of loneliness can accelerate the buildup of plaques in arteries, help cancer cells grow and spread, and promote inflammation in the brain, leading to Alzheimer's disease. Loneliness promotes several different types of wear and tear on the body, which, gosh, as a person who works with seniors exclusively, that is a huge thing for us to notice, not only in ourselves, but in our clients and patients and people that we interact with. Are these seniors lonely? Because if they are, they do have an increased risk of depression and high blood pressure, which, you know, leads to heart disease, to obesity, to that weakened immune system. And especially in this time of the coronavirus, a weakened immune system and being aged is a increased risk of having a very detrimental illness from coronavirus. And again, that cognitive decline, when we lose those interactions with people, our brains aren't functioning the same way. We're not connecting. And so that decline is accelerated, and it's associated with a lot of being lonely and being isolated. Another researcher has said that the misery and suffering caused by chronic loneliness is very real and warrants attention. As a social species, we're accountable to help our lonely children, parents, and neighbors, and even strangers is the same way we treat ourselves. So treating loneliness is a collective responsibility. You know, when we go back to some of those warning signs of senior isolation, an unhealthy diet. Well, if we're not eating well, our blood pressure will go up because the increased amount of sodium in our diets. If we're eating a lot of frozen meals, again, the sodium content's very high, but also a lot of times the fat content is as well. And so that increases our risk for heart disease. If you're staying in and isolated, the likelihood of routine exercise has decreased. And so that increases your risk of obesity. You know, not being physically active does weaken your immune system. And then that anxiety of leaving your home and social anxiety for our seniors is a real occurrence. A lot of times what I found is it's not so much the anxiety of leaving the house and seeing people. They want to do that. It's the anxiety of I might fall, or I might get lost, or, you know, something might happen. And if they fall, then, you know, they're afraid that they're going to break their hip and be in a skilled nursing home. So those are all real fears that our seniors are facing, which limits their desire to leave their home, which then it's this cyclical kind of this cycle of being isolated. You want to leave, you're afraid to leave, you don't leave, and then you keep going around and around. But isolation, it is preventable, granted, at this point in our nation, in our state, it's a little more of a challenge, but we should be making those social engagements a priority now. So when the senior centers open back up, encouraging our participants, our patients and clients to go to a congregate meal. The meals are a reduced cost for those 60 and over. But in a lot of the senior centers, it's not just a meal that's served. They're playing, you know, they're playing games like a pinochle group, a bridge group. There's bingo. A lot of the senior centers have exercise classes available. There are, during tax season at some senior centers, there's tax assistance. So seniors can make appointments and go and have their taxes done. All our social interactions and help prevent some of that being isolated. So the senior centers are a great resource. Church groups, I know at a lot of churches here in the Valley, but gosh, throughout the state, a lot of the churches have seniors only groups. They meet and have a senior Bible study. They have, you know, coffee chats. A lot of the churches also teach the Fit and Fall Proof class, which, if you're not familiar, is a class geared to help seniors specifically be more stable and steady on their feet, so that fear of falling is decreased. It's an evidence-based program that has shown that in the time of the 10 weeks that the class is, they are able to stand, walk a specific amount, and sit back down, and the time from the first class to week 10 has decreased. So they're more able, their endurance has increased, but the flexibility and strength has increased, which is an awesome opportunity. But a lot of churches, they teach those classes. At senior centers, there are exercise classes as well, but also a lot of gyms, again, once they're open again, have senior specific classes. A lot of insurance plans cover silver sneakers or senior only programs that can help seniors be more active. And then in those classes, they're able to create a community and make some friends, which is one of the goals to prevent isolation. Community learning opportunities, the Treasure Valley is definitely blessed with a lot of these types of opportunities to learn. Boise Parks and Recreation, Nampa Parks and Rec. There are multiple classes throughout spring, summer, and fall specifically for seniors, whether it's, learning a new skill like painting, or some of the community learning opportunities, or even some exercise classes, Tai Chi, yoga, all to create a community environment so that seniors feel less isolated. Volunteering is also a great way to prevent this isolation. A lot of elementary schools are looking at having seniors come and help. Maybe it's during lunchtime, working in the lunchroom, reading to a class. The opportunities are there. Our office, for an example, for a volunteer opportunity, we have a volunteer ombudsman program, which means that these seniors are going into assisted living and skilled nursing homes and talking with people and making sure that the people in the assisted living and skilled nursing homes are being treated well, and if they had any concerns or complaints. So there's ways for our seniors that might feel isolated to connect with other people and to volunteer. There are quite a few also online chat groups kind of in this virtual reality that we're living in at the moment. These groups are great. Stitch is one of them. They have communities all throughout the US. I haven't seen any particular groups in Boise yet. Doesn't mean that they can't be started. Stitch was created in Australia as a way to connect people to each other. So the example that they use is this one woman in Arizona wanted to go to the thrift shop, but she didn't have anybody to go with and was kind of waiting in between picking up her grandkids. So she posted it on this, online group like, hey, I'm going to this thrift store. I would love somebody to join me. And she met 2 new people that loved to go thrifting just as much as she did. And they've created this social group that now they go to the thrift stores all together down in Arizona. AARP, for those that are members, there are some online groups that also meet, which, a lot of our seniors are part of AARP. It's kind of tends to be one of the first groups a lot of people join just as I've hit this milestone in life, so now they're sending me the paperwork, so I join. But they have some online groups and chat groups that, just connect via the internet, which is another awesome way to prevent some of this isolation. And then another chat group kind of virtual meetup is Meetup. There are groups here in Boise, and they range from, kind of a more romance type of meetup to, singles events, but to just, hey, I like to hike and we're going to meet up here. And some of those are senior specific. So another way to engage our homebound seniors. If obviously, kind of depending on the group, if they're physically able. Our office, as I've kind of alluded to, we promote a lot of the congregate meals and working with the senior centers. We do home delivered meals. So if you're familiar with Meals on Wheels services, the homemaker services, we do have some transportation services available. My job as the special project manager, I teach all of our health promotion and wellness workshops. So, again, that forms that community where you're both learning, but also making new friends and making this community to live well together. We have some respite services, which will help those isolated caregivers kind of get a break and not feel as alone. The ombudsman program, again, it's another way for seniors that are in the skilled nursing and assisted living facilities to not feel that like they are alone. That's where I started at the Area Agency on Aging, and it still holds a very near and dear place to my heart, advocating for people who do feel lonely. Moving into an assisted living and skilled nursing home is a huge sense of loss, a huge loss of freedom, of independence, and that increases our seniors' likelihood of feeling depressed and isolated. And so being able to go in and connect with people and ask them how they're doing, a simple "how are you," means a lot. And then our office, we also have the adult protection program. So seniors that you might be concerned about being alone or isolated and maybe are self-neglecting, our office would be able to do an assessment and see, are they vulnerable? Are they able to self-rescue? Do they have any services in the home? And then offer some of those. These services aren't exclusive to the area that I serve. So I serve Southwest Idaho. We serve the 10 counties kind of around Ada Canyon. So if you think Boise out to Payette and Fruitland, up to Cambridge, Council, McCall, and over to Glens Ferry and Mountain Home, my office serves all of that area. But throughout the state of Idaho, there are 6 area agencies on aging. In one of the last slides, there's a website to go to the Idaho Commission on Aging, which would link you to the specific area that you're in. The congregate meals and home delivered meals and homemaker services, they all look different depending on the area that you live in, whether you're rural or more urban setting. But these services are all geared to really keep people healthy and safe, but to also give some type of social interaction. The home delivered meals is that touch point for a lot of seniors that they are homebound, they're not going anywhere. Their only interaction with somebody is during that delivery of their meal. And it kind of gives the volunteer who's delivering the meal some eyes on of the homebound senior, which is another way to help prevent some of this isolation and that feeling of being alone. Let's see. So I had a couple of other, again, just kind of for your information, video resources that will be on the link. My favorite is the TEDx talk at the bottom corner, where this speaker, she's talking about the simple fact of having a meal. My hope is once we're able to connect with people physically again, that, the amount of virtual communication and FaceTime and Zoom meetings and talking with people, just simply talking with people on the phone, doesn't decrease, but it only continues to increase and leads to more connection and more people over. And so this TEDx talk, she talks about how having a meal with her grandmother, and that gave her grandmother a huge sense of purpose. And once people started moving away and those meals stopped, she became more isolated and more lonely. And so, gosh, just a simple meal can really change the way that our seniors are seen and how they feel. Giving a task to give some purpose to their lives is a big deal. So Again, here's that slide of who to contact for those services in your area. You know, throughout Idaho, there's all of the 6 different areas. We all do have very similar services, but again, the delivery might look a little different. If you're in a rural area, a home delivered meal might mean you get 1 hot meal for the week for that day that it's delivered, and then there'd be 6 frozen meals. It's still a meal and some contact. So it's, you know, some of the frozen meals, I know some seniors are like, this isn't my favorite, but it's something, right? So I'm gonna stop, and if there's any questions, I kind of went through that a little quicker. And I think kind of given the, I'm in a different location. I'm in my home office, the new normal. So I'm a little less distracted than had I been in my actual office. So are there any questions?
So this is Anna again. I'm not seeing any questions at this time on the whole chat, on the whole group chat. But I am putting my email address in there in case anyone needs any resources or Natalie's slides.
One of the other resources that I hadn't mentioned yet, and my resource pages are changing on a daily basis. Another resource for those that are homebound, and it's only in the Treasure Valley. It's a backpack buddy program, but it's connecting people that are either children at home or seniors at home with their neighbors, and so they're able to post some saying that they need help, and then that way the seniors and their neighbors are connected. And you know, that's another way that we can, hopefully that stays, because there always are going to be seniors that are homebound that are going to need help. You know, we live in a great time where grocery delivery is an option. You know, an Uber and a Lyft, those are options for those homebound seniors. And if not, you know, our office and all of the area agencies on aging have some transportation resources that could help. But just, you know, there's, again, my resource pages, they're changing on a daily basis. During COVID and the coronavirus kind of pandemic, United Way has compiled a list of resources as well for anybody that's needing help at this point in time. So I'll send those along to Anna to disseminate out to the group as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks like we don't have any questions at this time. Like Natalie said, I'll email out that United Way resource to everyone, and her slides are also available. This recording will be up on our website by the end of the day, so feel free to watch again if your connection kind of got messed up, or if you'd like to share with friends. So anyway, Natalie, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
You're very welcome. I hope all have a great day, and remember to stay connected.
Thanks, Natalie.
Yep.